Welcome to Straight Up Now Tell Me, Christian conversation that's straight without a chaser. And so we did not want the month of June to get away from here without us pausing to give, the fellas, the men and particularly also the dads a nod from, Straight Up Now Tell Me. We see you in all the things that you're doing, and we see, all the effort that you're putting forth to be a great dad or to be a great man, even in this month where we're celebrating, men and fathers, right? And so we wanted to just to pause in the midst of everything that's going on, just to say that, you are not being overlooked. And we know that there are some great relationships going on between dads and their sons, and some great relationships going on between dads and their daughters. And we certainly want to give honor where honor is due. And we applaud all of that. And we enjoy seeing it, online or even in real time. And we enjoy it and hearing about it. And we love a healthy relationship between father and and kid, father son, father daughter. And we truly hats off to you guys for doing a great job. And it may not always be applauded, but it does not go unseen. So we just wanted to pause to say that on today. So happy Father's Day, belated Father's Day, even. But, hey, we're celebrating men and fathers all month long, all throughout June. And we certainly want to be a part of that here. But we also wanted to pause for a moment, simply because we know that there are other times when you as men and particularly you as fathers may also feel unseen. You may feel unappreciated or maybe even invisible at certain points in life, or maybe even in distress. And we want to, just pause to acknowledge that and to know that, we appreciate you as men, but we also know that you are full persons as well, and that you have a range of things that, that challenge you in life, and a range of things that you have to deal with. And so we did not want to, skirt past that, throughout this month as we're pausing to let you know how very valuable you are. But please know that you are not unseen, that that God sees, and he sees your every effort that you're putting forth, your every good deed that you've done. And even, beyond that, he sees you simply as his child. So you are never unnoticed. You are never unseen. There is never a time when you can feel, well, let me say this. There could never be a time when God is not with us and with you, particularly as a man. And he knows the challenges that you face in this life. And as being a dad or being, just being alive in this time. So I wanted to pause and to acknowledge that this month, and to just say, big up to you guys, and the fact that, we appreciate you so much. And this life would never be the same without a male presence or without, a dad's presence, in effect. So if you don't hear it enough, we certainly want you to hear it on today, that you are appreciated beyond measure, and that we understand that life throws challenges at us sometimes, and they can come in many forms, but be encouraged on today. So we also wanted to just pause for a sec to talk about a few things that we know that may be some of the things that you're facing, and that I think that society as a whole does not pause enough to acknowledge. And so there is a true life account of someone who actually had to face the devastation of losing a child in the form of an abortion. And he's a guy, a great guy, and it just took the breath out of him. Real true story. And I guess life took a turn where things just felt like they were all falling apart. And so I wanted to pause to talk about that on today, because I think a lot goes unsaid in that space. And certainly we know that there are two sides to every coin, and that there are people who will adamantly tell you that it's a woman's choice because it's her body. And so we're not here to to talk about that on today, or try to solve that, or even try to weigh in on it. But what we want to acknowledge is that there are people, male persons out there, who are affected by this, and who might feel like they go unseen, and that they're the hurt that they're experiencing, the grief that they're going through, is not acknowledged. And so what we want to say on today is that certainly it is acknowledged and that we are certainly not oblivious to it. We are not turning our eyes away from that. And so what we offer you today is just encouragement along the way. And just ask that you would please, in that situation, invite God in and let him be the key, your key source in this situation. And so, again, there's a pathway, and I think a lot of people have said it, most recently that, we believe in, inviting God in, but we also believe in therapy. And so if you can find a good, I guess, a male-centered grief counseling group, and even online, then we certainly invite you to please, make use of that. And we understand that, grief is grief. And there are people who actually, will remind us that really, a father is a father forever, even, after the death of an unborn child. And so we understand that, and we want to really offer any help that we can by way of encouragement on today to let you know that it is a real thing. You are allowed to feel that way, and you are certainly allowed to go to seek, grief counseling in that regard to help you, just pick up the pieces in that regard as well. So please, know that, it does not go unseen, and it is not something that you are not allowed to grieve. And so please know that, and please make use of every resource that there is available out there for persons who are grieving and to help yourself heal. But we also wanted to add to that, and just I guess a different element of fatherhood and a different challenge that a lot of times, again, we believe that just goes unspoken. And so one thing that we have noticed is that it seems to be on the rise, and maybe there are countless accounts of something known as, I guess I'm trying to find a good way of saying it, but the key term is called parental alienation. And so what this involves is when a relationship goes awry between two persons and there's a child involved. And so where a dad or even a mom, and real talk, but we're talking about dads on today, but when a dad previously had a pretty sound relationship with the child, but then since things have changed in the relationship, then the dad starts to be intentionally alienated from the child by the other parent. And so that is something that seems to be ongoing and on the rise. But what I want to stop and say is that most experts agree in a situation like that, where the dad is being bad-mouthed in front of the child, or being told things, whether they're true or untrue, before the child, in an attempt to get the son or the daughter to not want to spend time with the dad, or to desire something other than time spent or the previous relationship that they had with their dad. Then. I'll back up. In situations like that, experts do agree that it's not the dad that alone who's suffering, but the real victim of it all is a child who's being programmed to have a negative outlook towards a person in general or towards people in general. And so what it brings to mind is when we talk about kids who are programmed at an early age to not like persons of certain demographics. To not like the poor, to not like people of certain race, to they're programmed into this, and so at an early age they start to form, I guess, a stance that is not healthy for the child, and also is not healthy for the people that is directed to. And so in this situation, a dad is a dad, and none of us have done parenting perfectly, and I certainly have not, even though I've tried, tremendously to love my son. But a dad is a dad, and people have made mistakes. There are dads who started, fatherhood in their teenage years. There are dads who started fatherhood in their early 20s, and of any age. And so there's still a lot of growth that people, young adults, go through, and a lot of room for error. And even for dads who have begun parenting at an older age. I mean, whatever the case, and when we badmouth one another is what I'm trying to say. It does not help the child along the way. It may help us get our way as an adult, But I think it's very unhealthy when that occurs. And so, but what I'm trying to say on today is that, for dads who are going through that, are I guess, victims of that, then to be encouraged. And what we would offer on today is that, you seek, counseling, to help you along the way, but also that you invite God in, because again, we believe, in having God, weigh in on everything and help us as our guide. But we also, believe in getting, counseling in that regard. And so what I will say is there's an opportunity for you, even online, to do an all-male counseling, I guess, small group, so to speak, which is just a group of, of men who gather to talk about issues and to try to help each other along the way. And so if you are able to partake in that, then please, please take a moment to do that. But, invite God in, talk to somebody, get, a good counselor if you can, join a men's group online, and I'll mention one just in a sec. But also, if you can connect with a child psychologist, and not so that you can take your child, but so that you can better understand how your child is thinking and what they're thinking, and so you can, I guess, try to parent towards that. And not that, you want to manipulate that, or like, maybe another parent might be doing, I do mean might, but this so that you can really, parent, health in a healthy way, and really help your child, get back on track where that's concerned. And even if you're being denied access, the thing that most of the experts are saying is that to really work on you, and to really be a full person, and to live a healthy life yourself, and because that is something that has a gravitational force. And so when a kid sees that, the dad is out there and he's, being healthier, or he's, doing, some healthy stuff in life, then it's attractive in and of itself. And so that will, I always say a lot more is spoken, a lot more is caught than taught. And so they see that, or hear of that, and so they can appreciate that as long as healthy, and then, and that they know that the door is open for them, and you roll from that stance. So again, please do invite God in, get a solid, Christian counselor, somebody who's telling you something healthy to do. And then not only that, join a men's group. And so there is something called 100K Fathers. And it's a group online, and they have a free resource, and I'll post that in here in the video on today. But they also have a paid eight-week session, and obviously I have not been a part of that because I'm not male. But some of the testimonies they have online, testimonials, I guess, that they have online from different dads who have taken part of it, are very encouraging. And so I will try to put that. Well, I will definitely put the link in here. But again, they have resources that are available for free. But if you are able to take part in that, what really caught my attention is that they're just dads who've gone through situations like that, and there's more than a few of them who can are trying to offer wisdom and advice to help other dads along the way. And so keep that in mind. But then they also have an element of their program where they are talking specifically about child psychology, which I mentioned earlier. And I think that is the kind of the missing link sometimes, in to help dads really know how to how their child is processing the information that they're having, that they've been given. And so to look at it from their their younger mind standpoint and what that means to them. And so it just provides some insight. So again, please, be encouraged, and we see you as dads, and we know that you have some, challenges that may be different than some of the ones we face ourselves, but we see you, and we want to encourage you along the way. And just to say that you're not alone, and you're not being overlooked, and that we realize that you are a whole person with, whole emotions, and that you have to deal with like any other person, that God created. So just wanted to touch on those two things, and to say one last thing. And so I actually met a guy who had, two children, and one was kind of progressing along the way, and the other one was stumbling a little bit through life. And so as a dad, I think what he relayed to me more than anything is that he felt a sense of failure in that situation. that he had failed as a parent, had failed as a dad, just simply because his son was not making wise choices and really getting involved in some things that he never even imagined that his son would be involved in. And so he took it to heart, and he just really didn't like to talk about the whole parenting aspect, because he felt like, it was, it really proved, positively that he was, a failed, father figure, that he was just had not been able to check that box, so to speak. And so it brought a lot of grief and a lot of heartache his way. And his son was in his mid-20s, but again, it could be anything, no need to go into specifics, but I'm sure there are other people who may feel that as well. But what I tried to do more than anything was to encourage him along the way, because it is not always an indication of our parenting skills, how our kids, the choices that they make early on, especially in their 20s, and not that they can't recover from it, or even in their 30s. It is not necessarily an indicator of our parenting ability. And what I shared with him, and what I would like to share on today, if you find yourself in that situation, that please be encouraged, because I will say this, God is a great father. And when it comes to fatherhood, God has been doing this for a long time. And he is very intentional about, his love and his guidance that he provides for us as his children. And, he is, he's never failing. And so he never fails. But then when you look at his kids, myself included, then sometimes we are off the rails, and sometimes we're not doing everything that he would have us to do, and not because he's a failure as a father, but simply because of the choices that we make. So if God's kids can be off the rails, and sometimes we are, and if we can make bad decisions, and sometimes we do, and I certainly mean we when I say that, and if we cannot check all the boxes as his children, and sometimes make some crucial mistakes, and some not so crucial mistakes, but mistakes as they are, and if we are his children, then that certainly proves positive that hey, not every father is a failure simply because their kids go awry. And so, but the thing that I also encouraged him to do, and I'll say it again, today to us as well, is to keep praying for your kid, keep, setting an example. And I always use the example of the prodigal son, where, kids in my life, in my space are concerned. And so that's a parable that's, God gave us as a way of an example of his love for us. And that, there's a son came, said, hey, give me all of my inheritance. You're still alive. Give me what's mine. And the father did it. And the son goes out and spends it all on wild living, prostitutes, the whole nine. And then, where, a lot of us might be offended, like, hey, number one, I'm still alive. But number two, it's like, hey, what about me? And he just put a lot of space between he and his dad. But, the good part of the story is that he eventually came to his senses. And when he did, he decided, I'm going back home, and I'm going to tell my dad, I've made a mess of this. Please just make me your servant. I don't deserve to be your son. And so he comes back, and his dad sees him coming down the road. And the minute he sees him, he runs to his son. And his son, which, running as a man back in, and I guess in the time frame we're talking about, was considered like not a dignified response. But to heck with that, he's like, this is my son who I love, and this is God's parable of how he feels towards us, which is his way. It's a story that God is sharing with us so that we understand his love towards us. But he runs to his son, and his son is trying to tell him, all this he's practiced that he wants to say to his dad when he encounters him about making me your servant and everything. His dad is not hearing any of that. He's like, hey, my son is here, and he welcomes him back no matter what he's been into. He's like, he's happy, and he, puts a, ring on his finger to signify that he belongs to me, to this family. He puts, tells his servant, put sandals on his feet, and he throws a huge party to say, my son, who, once, was, thought to be dead, so to speak, into emotionally or physically, whatever the case. It's like he's back, And so he never said a word, never asked his son a question about, what had happened or what he had done, but he was happy to have him back and to celebrate this. And so that is simply a short story that God gave us to help us understand his love towards us. And so by way of example, and so no matter what our kids are doing, if they should turn around and should come back to us, we have an example of how God, views our return that we can use, and simply to welcome them back, to help them, along the way from, the point that you're at now, and to keep things moving. So I just wanted to share that, and more than anything, again, I want to say, that we appreciate you guys more than you know, and I know you don't hear it enough, but we are so thankful that you are doing things that you do, that you're trying, and that that you are loved by God. So hey, even where there's situations where you feel like you haven't put the effort in, but then we would encourage you to not to worry about the past, but let God show you how to move forward from the point that you are, and to be a great dad and to be a great man. And we applaud you guys, is what we're trying to say, is straight up now tell me. And didn't want the podcast to be long on today, but hey, you guys are worth it, and I hope you have enjoyed the month of June, and I hope you enjoy the rest of life. And again, thank you for being the men that you are. Thank you for trying. Thank you for being willing to change where you feel like change is needed. And thank you for just being part of the family of God. And so even if you haven't made the change yet, it's not too late to jump on board, and God is certainly situated to help you throughout this whole thing called life. And so two last things. One, God, instructs us not to exasperate our children. So it's one thing that's talked about in the Word of God. So, don't exasperate them, but do, try to find healthy ways to engage and to reconnect. And again, get a child psychologist on board, not to evaluate the kids, but to help you, learn some stuff about how to deal with children, how to read that if needed. And also, get some counseling for you, and work on you being the best dad that you can be, even if they are far away. Hey, people talk, and and things become attractive if we're out, trying to be healthy, trying to improve whatever we need to improve, experiencing life, and and we're inviting them in. Hey, the doors, even if we can't, they make sure they know in their hearts that they are always welcome to join in. So if you're out touring the world, and if they know they're welcome to join, hey, that's attractive. And to some kids, you never know. But if you're studying something, that they're interested in, that's attractive, whatever the case. But, continue to grow. Continue to grow is what I'm trying to say. But the other thing that I want to say is that the greatest gift that we can give our kids, even ourselves, is our own healing. And so if there are places where we know that we need to heal, and we need the counseling, and we need everything that's out there for us to grab hold of, then our healing as a mom or as a dad is the greatest gift we can give our kids. If we heal from the hurt that we've experienced, if we learn to forgive the other party, that it's that's forgiveness, again, we always say is for us to help get that out of our space, so we can keep moving through this life and not get hung back there. But if we can heal from the hurt and learn to forgive, yes, Philemon or Philemon, there's a Bible story, a book in there that we always mispronounce the name, but if you can look it up, it's Philemon, and there's a great story about how to consider possibly forgiving, based on the faith that we have in Jesus Christ and the love that we have for him and all of his children. And so God says, what, I will not forget the love that you've shown me being God, as you have helped my people and continue to help, and so God says that we show him love by being by loving other people and trying to help. So if we can look that up, if we need an example of how to begin even thinking about how to forgive the other parent or someone in life, for our own healing, again, that is the greatest gift, absolutely the greatest gift that we can give our kids on today. And I guess one other thing that we would like to say is that we certainly understand that as a dad, a lot of times, and I think more often than not, you probably feel that, you do not have the support from the court system or from, from society as a whole when things go awry, that you may feel that you do not have the support. You may feel a total lack of support from anybody and that you're kind of out there on your own. But what I will say is this, that you are never alone. And I know I've said it previously, but just please know that, you have help, and all we have to do is to allow God to help and to be our guide. And so he's not seeking to mandate, this whole, I guess, effort over our lives, but he is there as a loving father, to guide you along the way as a man, and to really to have himself available as a sounding board, so to speak, when no one else is there to hear, or to be there to encourage you along the way. So please be encouraged and know that God is certainly there, but we have to let him in. And he will not force his way in, but he is certainly there to help. And so please use him as a key resource, as we've mentioned previously. And one other thing I wanted to say is that, when it comes to, I guess they call it, I think it's reuniting therapy, or let me think about this. let me check. Reunification therapy is what I was looking for. And so the recommendation is, and what that is that it's counseling to help a son or a daughter reunite with their dad. But I guess the key point that I want to offer on today, that some experts have said, is not to force your kids to go through that, because they're kids and they're thinking with the kids' mind, and they're being told one thing by one parent, and hearing maybe things by way of innuendo, simply maybe parents even just hinting all the time that you're not who they thought you were, or you're not the greatest dad, or whatever the case. And so these thoughts are being they're being programmed that way. So reunification therapy, if it's forced, can kind of be traumatic for the child. But again, invite God in, and we talked previously about just get the counseling yourself, also get your individual counseling, but also connect with someone who can help school you, so to speak, on the child psychology aspect of it, so you can understand how your child is processing this, and ways to to really communicate with them in a way that they can understand psychologically, and they don't have to know that's what's going on, but that they can also kind of not be traumatized during the reconnection process. And if you're waiting to reconnect, again, just keep building on yourself, and know again that you are certainly not alone, right? And invite God in. And so I had some notes on today, and just wanted to cover that. But one other thing is that we all have to say, whether we may be mad because it's going on, or we may be upset about it and ready to give up, but we all have to answer the question at some point, is whether or not we want to be made whole. And so do we want to be made whole? And we will never get there without inviting God in, and without working on ourselves, and without learning to forgive in the situation. And you don't have to reconnect, you don't have to continue in a relationship day to day with someone who has ill behavior. But we have to let God heal us, and we have to do the hard work of learning new ways to interact with people, and to process the feelings that we have, and to get the counseling that we need. And so we need both. We need God and a good pathway forward. That a good counselor, a good Christian counselor, if we can find one, is probably the most ideal situation. But we have to put the work in. But we have to make up our minds that we want to be made whole. We want to heal in this situation, and we not accepting it per se, but we're not going to become embittered by it, is what we're saying. Because we're going to still be the best person that we can be, minus what they're doing. We're going to trust God to help, walk us through this process, and we're going to get the counseling we need, so that when we have the opportunity to connect with our kid, whenever it comes, that we'll be the best person that we are. We won't be embittered. We will not be off the rails and not moving forward in life because of the ill will of someone else that they've thrown in front of us. So thank you again, and please, hold on to all that thought, replay the broadcast if needed, and just know that you are appreciated beyond measure, and we see you. You have not gone unseen by God, and not even by us at Straight Up Now Tell Me. So thank you again for being a great man. Thank you for being a great dad. If you are a father, thank you for holding it down, and we certainly realize again that you are a man. Yes, and we applaud that sincerely, but that you are also a whole person, and you are certainly allowed to be. So thank you again for listening to Straight Up Now Tell Me, and we certainly hope that you feel our love and appreciation, and that you're having a great month and a great day, and will have a great year to finish out this year. So thank you again, and we hope to see you next time.
Love him like I do, love him like I do. That's why I love him like I do, love him like I do,
Giving honor to you first, my folks and friends. Listen to these words, see God save me from myself when no one else was around. And it was only by His grace, His mercy, His favor, 'cause I know I don't deserve all the love He showed me, how He let me know He never gonna leave my side. Saved my soul when I was just a sinner left in the cold. Gave me a second chance, saved me from myself, came to my rescue.